Chinese cash coins are some of the only cast coinage that we know of today. Casting coins was unpopular in the West throughout history, although in the Far East, in particular China and Japan, casting was the method commonly used to create coinage. I'm going to attempt to replicate the design of these coins, but the design will be unhistorical. As you can see here, I placed wax paper down to prevent the clay from sticking to the masonite. These wooden strips are to make sure that the clay is completely level once it's rolled out. The reason I choose clay over any other material is that clay is easily formed and it is relatively inexpensive. Even though I do take great care to make sure the clay is completely level, this is unnecessary since I'll have to sand down the clay blanks anyway. I now take out two old prescription bottles, which have the same diameter as the coin, to punch out blanks. The only problem with this is that the clay blanks tend to get stuck inside of the prescription bottles, which only allow a few well-made blanks to be made at a time. Another problem with using clay, which I can't really prevent, is that once the clay dries and hardens, it shrinks, which creates a depression in the center. Later on, I have to spend many minutes sanding the blanks flat. After this, I remove any clay around any blanks which remained outside of the bottles. I then set everything aside to dry and wait until tomorrow for all the blanks to harden. Once the blanks have hardened, I take them and sand them down with 120 grit sandpaper to get them completely flat. I then sand it down with 400 grit sandpaper to remove the scuff marks from the 120 grit sandpaper and to prepare it for being smoothed down for the 1000 grit sandpaper. Once I reach the 1000 grit sandpaper, it is just to get the clay blank completely smooth. There are not many scuff marks left behind from the 400 grit sandpaper. The 1500 grit sandpaper is just to assure that it is completely smooth and reflective. As you can see here, when I present to you the finished blank, it is completely smooth and actually reflects a bit of light. I now use a compass cutter to cut out circles for the templates. This one is 25mm in diameter. This template will represent the inner circle and define the outer rim of the coin. I now change the compass cutter to cut 30mm diameter circles, which is what I need for the larger template. This larger circle will help define the inner square, which needs to be hollowed out. Keep in mind that what I am making now is a negative representation of the coin. This means that all the geographical features are inversed. For example, any raised surfaces are lowered, and vice versa. I now make two perpendicular diameters on the circles to help construct the squares. This part was a bit tricky to figure out at first, but eventually I found a way to construct a perfect square. Of course I could use a protractor or two rulers side by side for this, but I found that a piece of paper is most accurate for right angles. This is the large base template, which is meant to define the inner square to be hollowed out. This is the smaller circle meant to define the outer rim and the inner square border of the circle. Here you can see how the templates look when stacked upon each other. The overlap is where the square border is going to be. Here is how the templates looked once glued together and placed on a presentation blank. I finally glued them to the clay blank, and now we are ready to cast the first dies. However, a lot of work still remains to be done.